All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive curveball, the sudden overnight disappearance of a major AI model, and what that shockwave actually means for the safety of your daily work. We're going to look way beyond the immediate headlines here and really dig into the practical, on-the-ground lessons for anyone who relies on these tools to get their professional workflows done. So, let's dive into this critical question by looking at a real-world event that just absolutely shocked the tech industry. It exposed a massive, often completely overlooked vulnerability in exactly how we are structuring our modern work. Just imagine building your entire professional process around a specific tool, only to wake up and find it completely inaccessible. What do you actually do? Let's start with Section 1, the Friday night shutdown, when Fable 5 went dark. Okay, picture this. It's Friday, June 12th, 2026, and the AI landscape experiences a sudden, massive shockwave. At exactly 5:21 p.m. Eastern Time, the U.S. government issues an export control directive straight to the AI company Anthropic. Citing national security authorities, the directive demanded the immediate suspension of access to two specific frontier models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, for any foreign national. But you know how tightly integrated these systems are, right? Because of that architecture, Anthropic literally couldn't just surgically remove access. So, to ensure full compliance, they had to abruptly disable these models for every single customer globally. Boom. Just like that. Within hours, the models were entirely shut off for everyone. Now, it's worth noting that access to Anthropic's other models remained totally unaffected, but their flagship Fable 5 and Mythos 5 systems, they just completely vanished from the market. Which brings us to Section 2, the jailbreak dispute, national security versus industry standards. Now, we've got a seriously fascinating contrast in how this event is being interpreted. As impartial observers here, we're just reporting the friction. On one side, you have the U.S. government viewing this as a genuine national security concern. Their stance is that they became aware of a method to bypass or jailbreak Fable 5 safeguards. But then on the flip side, Anthropic publicly disagrees with the whole basis of the recall. They reviewed the demonstration and basically stated, look, this is a narrow, non-universal vulnerability. To them, it's essentially just asking the model to read a codebase and fix some software flaws. They're quick to point out that they spent thousands of hours red teaming these models, and they argue that similar vulnerabilities exist in other widely available models across the industry, like GPT 5.5, for example. So there's your divide, a government action rooted firmly in national security, and an industry player arguing that the standard being applied here could basically halt all new model deployments. Moving on to Section 3, the illusion of ownership beneath the surface of the headlines. While the internet is loudly arguing over export controls and who's right, the actual lesson for your professional practice is hidden just beneath the surface. The absolute crucial point here is perfectly captured by Lana Akopian over at The Agentic Lawyer. She writes, a model you build a workflow on can be removed without your input, for reasons that have nothing to do with you on a timeline you do not control. Just think about the sheer vulnerability that exposes for a second. Relying heavily on one specific hosted AI model to complete your client deliverables creates a massive single point of failure in your practice. And honestly, the mechanism of the shutdown doesn't actually matter. It could be a government directive, it could be a sudden change in pricing, a regional restriction, or even just a tweak in the terms of service. The exposure for you, the professional, is exactly the same. And this brilliantly illustrates the paradigm shift we desperately need to make right now. See, most professionals currently treat AI models the way they treat electricity, as a stable, permanent utility that's just always going to be there when you flip the switch. But that is an illusion. The reality of AI is that it's a volatile commercial product. It's highly subject to sudden market forces, regulatory actions, and, as we've seen, total shutdowns. If your workflow only functions when one specific model is online, you've essentially handed the off switch for your entire practice over to a third party. As Akopian rightly points out, this is a professional competence problem way before it's even a technology problem. Technological competence isn't just about knowing how to write a clever prompt. It includes understanding that your tools are, by their very nature, ephemeral. Let's look at Section 4, the hidden data cost when safety becomes a liability. So, let's talk about a detail that totally flew under the radar in the mainstream headlines, but it directly impacts your professional duty of confidentiality. To secure Fable 5, Anthropic actually acknowledged that perfect 100% jailbreak resistance just isn't possible yet, so they utilized a defense-in-depth strategy. Basically, this means trying to make jailbreaks incredibly narrow or super expensive to pull off, and then backing that up with thorough monitoring to quickly detect and mitigate any successful attacks. And honestly, from a public safety standpoint, that is a completely defensible, totally logical design choice by the provider. But to actually achieve that level of safety and monitoring, the provider mandated something highly specific: a 30-day retention of customer data. Let's pause and really think about what that number means for a professional. It means that to even use Fable 5, your inputs, your sensitive prompts, and your documents sat in a third-party systems for a full month. Why? Specifically, so they could be examined and researched to prevent cyber attacks. Now, to be fair, Anthropic was fully transparent about this. It wasn't a secret. It was a deliberate trade-off carrying real costs. But let's be real, it's exactly the kind of critical term that most professionals just scroll right past before pasting in highly sensitive material. And that leads us to this pretty stark reality. The capability you want the most and the data condition you want the absolute least arrived in the exact same package. Look at this from the perspective of a lawyer or a business professional. A measure specifically designed to make the models safer for the public suddenly morphs into a massive, documented confidentiality liability for you. For practitioners handling unfiled patents, prior art analysis, or strict trade secrets, a casual 30-day stay in someone else's infrastructure is just unacceptable. It vastly expands the period of third-party custody and completely changes the facts you'd have to defend if anyone ever questioned how that highly sensitive material was handled. Finally, Section 5. Protecting your practice, 3 concrete moves.
Look, the goal of this explainer isn't to induce panic or suggest you abandon AI technology altogether. No way. These tools are incredibly powerful. The real goal here is to adapt intelligently to what are now just permanent features of our digital landscape. So, to protect your client work, you need to implement these 3 concrete steps. Number 1, you have to read the data terms before any client material ever touches the model. Treat data retention periods and training use policies as hard facts that you are actively responsible for, not just fine print to scroll past. Number 2, keep your sensitive workflows portable. Always assume any hosted model can and will disappear, and ensure your client deliverable can actually survive that disappearance. And number 3, match the tool to the sensitivity of the matter. The absolute most powerful model available is not the right default if its data retention policies compromise the very information you are being paid to protect. I mean, you wouldn't use the same model to summarize a public court docket as you would to analyze an unfiled multi-million-dollar invention, right?
Which brings us to our ultimate takeaway. As the incredible tools we rely on continue to prove that they are temporary, vulnerable commercial products, how are you ensuring your core professional competence remains permanent? Are you building workflows that depend entirely on the machine, or are you keeping your judgment firmly in the driver's seat? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay sharp out there and protect your practice.